Hello Delusional Losers, Admin Alex here to talk to you this Christmas season about The Hobbit, the Desolation of Smaug. We here at Delusional Losers are going to try and make these reviews a fairly common thing if we can, most certainly for the geeky movies, but also for the movies that we just think you should be keeping your eyes on. If you haven't already seen Anonymous's review of American Hustle, then I highly suggest you do now, it's very entertaining. I don't plan to keep you very long, because it's really only going to be me covering everything about the film that I see fit, as well as trying to give a balanced critique as possible. Now, whilst I'm going to try and keep this review as spoiler-free as physically possible for me, there is a very good chance I may say something that might be considered a spoiler, and generally if you haven't seen this film and you're very sure you don't want plot points to be spoiled for you, which I know a lot of people don't, then it's probably best if you don't listen. But please, just give it a thumbs up anyway, please. For any person who gives a thumbs up, I'll sing a song. That's not legit or redeemable, but just please give us a thumbs up. We need it so bad. Right, without further ado, here's my review of The Hobbit, the Desolation of Smaug. The first Hobbit film was undeniably, for any fan of the books or the original Lord of the Rings films, a real homecoming. Whilst it was slow, and it didn't bring much to the table besides a little exposition, it was a touching experience that for many has been years in the making. I certainly remember sitting around for a long time, reading all these reviews about how Peter Jackson might be or might not be making a Hobbit film, and it was really nice when that finally came to fruition. And of course, this film was absolutely no different. The film began with a familiar tune and a familiar face in the form of a fantastic cameo, which reminded us all why we'd come to the cinema that day, and for the most it was like being a child again. This film has its issues, as many do, but you can't fault it for being a wonderful Middle-earth tale and a definite improvement on the first. The story is one of the most notable improvements on the first film. Whilst the first Hobbit film was a fantastic return to the Middle-earth mythos, it was also quite slow and bland at times, and whilst introducing us to a new cast, it didn't really introduce us to much of a new world. This could be partially put down to the apparent necessity of splitting the very limited source material over 3 different films, but that's neither here nor there. This film, however, goes beyond the first, and it really invests itself in the material of the book. It explores new locations and dynamic set pieces which keep the film rolling along quite quickly without leaving the audience feeling too bored as parts of the first film did. Whilst this is an improvement, it didn't come without its flaws. The film is clearly fighting hard at times to get to the dragon scenes, and this means quite a large amount of the book's source material is sped through quite quickly. We pass through Bjorn and Mirkwood, even the Thranduil material, in quick relative succession, so we might get to the Lake Town and Erebor scenes. This, however, could be also argued to be a fault of attempting to pace a 2-film project and make it a 3-film project. On top of this new storyline, we're reunited with a cast we knew a year ago, and it almost seems as if no time at all has passed since the last Christmas we saw them. Just as The Two Towers did so well, this film serves to enhance the characters we knew from the first film and invests more time in the characters that we may not have heard so much from the first film. And thankfully, we're spared some cringe-worthy dialogue from that little hobbit in the first one, whose name I don't really care to remember. And in my book, this is most definitely a positive. To contrast, however, this film seems to spend so much time on the plethora of new characters and old, that for the most part of the film, the spotlight is very much off the hobbit himself, which is a shame. Because as we see in the halls of Erebor in this movie, Martin Freeman is a fantastic actor and brings a lot to this film in his own way. Similarly, I'm growing tired with how the screen time that Thorin gets, he seems to do nothing but mope. I understand this is the way that the character acts in the book, but for the most part it's growing tiresome at times. I'm kind of hoping they change that dynamic up a little bit in the third film. Just make him a little bit more hopeful. I don't know, there's a lot of conflict coming. We also have a number of new characters, whom are all just as interesting as they were in the book, and some who are not strictly speaking part of the original Hobbit tale. Firstly there was the controversy around the supposed shoehorning of Legolas back into the film, and admittedly, whilst his character seems a little out of place sometimes, for the most part he seems as though he truly fits into this universe, and why shouldn't he? Similarly, the new character Toriel is a welcome addition, who serves a very useful plot point. And while some can argue that she does little other than to serve this kind of romance plot, I feel as though she's written in cleverly in a manner which would make Tolkien himself proud. She's a fierce fighter and an interesting new face in a book that definitely needed fleshing out. Of course, in terms of fleshing out the book, we also had the necromancer who features more heavily in this. It's a dark tale, and it does kind of contrast against the slightly lighter-hearted one that we're following of the Hobbits, but it's certainly not out of place. And it's a nice welcome addition. We also have the character of Bjorn, whom I was very excited to finally see. However, he's an extremely strong character. He's very interesting, but he's severely underused. He features for only a small part of the film, which is a definite shame. This is mostly down to getting to Lake Town and Erebor as quickly as possible, and once we're at Lake Town, we have some fantastic new characters as well. The Master of Lake Town is a fantastic and colourful character, who for any fans of the national treasure which Stephen Fry is, you'll certainly get a kick out of seeing him in this film. He's joined by a less noticeable but still engaging lackey in the form of Alfred, who bears a striking resemblance to Grima from the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, and is a fairly similar character in most respects. And of course, we have Bard, whose character's fleshed out with a family now, and far more of a story than he ever got from the book. He has an entire sort of backwards-facing mythos, which most people enjoyed watching. And for those who know the story of the book, it may be obvious as to why Jackson wishes to flesh this character out a little bit more. It's done so very effectively. And of course, when we're looking at the film's characters, there is of course the major set-piece character in the form of Smaug the dragon. For those who don't wish to hear specifics about the character's appearance, and I'd stop listening for a few seconds, but I'm not really going to cover too much about it. He has a clear Eastern influence, and he's not a disappointment when he's finally revealed in all his might on the big screen. He's definitely a character that has to be seen in the cinema whilst you can. I'm not sure how he would hold up on the television, but you need to see that scale in the cinema. The craftsmanship that's gone into him and his animation is clear and effective, and he's extremely striking when in action. However, in terms of the visuals of the film, this seems to be the trade-off. For in my opinion, for the most part anyway, the scenes featuring Smaug seem to suffer in terms of the texturing, particularly in the halls and the forges of Erebor, where little time seems to have been spent on anything other than the dragon, and at times this proves to be very weak and almost distractingly so, though some people I know didn't have a problem with this at all. This, however, isn't the case for the rest of the film, which is rich in location, as is a trademark of the Middle-earth series, and shows some spectacularly beautiful scenes at times, which I really suppose is just down to the beautiful landscape that New Zealand has to offer. The title card itself is beautiful, and it's immediately impressive from the get-go, and I suppose that's just the way that Peter Jackson does things. He doesn't do bland. And finally, no Middle-earth saga would be complete without the original Howard Shore score. He has a clear ear for music that makes a wonderful score that isn't just some background music to keep the film going, but a set piece within itself. Of course, the film starts with a taste of the Shire music, which serves to reel us all back into that world which we know and love, and it immediately tugs at the heartstrings of the audience. The score uses many of the themes from the original film, whilst adding some fantastic new themes for places like Lake Town and characters like Smaug, each of their own twangs giving them some individuality which makes them more noticeable than the rest. The music definitely ices the cake, which is The Hobbit Part 2. Now, in terms of a final rating, it's kind of difficult to say on this one because I'm still kind of reeling from it, but it's definitely like 3.5, 4 out of 5 for me right now. This could go down as time passes. I may see it again, I may start to think a little bit more, I may start to reflect, but right now it's in a strong place, and it's undeniably better than the first film. So I would highly suggest that you all go watch it while it's still in the cinema. It's a great Christmas adventure movie, and it won't let you down. Thank you all for listening. It's a real bonus for the Delusional Losers page when you can just spend some time and listen to our reviews. If you have anything that you'd like to say, if you'd like to make a comment, please leave it in the comments section. We read and we do our best to reply to all of them, and if you can give us a thumbs up, that really helps with the flow as well. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a very good night and a very good Christmas.